Hello, friends. Good day to you. It is May 22nd, 2019. This is Molly McCord, and thank you for joining me as we talk about the weekly astrology energies of the next 7 days. Every Wednesday, we look at these energies and how they are supporting us, what our choices are, and where we can feel powerful in ourselves as we move through this time. I appreciate all of you who have listened to this show for a number of years. This is a podcast for those who listen on YouTube, and you can find it on Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, Stitcher, and anywhere else you listen to your podcasts. As I mentioned in last week's shows, there was no episode on Monday as I was traveling, and in fact, I was flying home Monday night. I had a southbound flight. I was sitting at a window seat, and I could see the moon, the beautiful, gorgeous moon. It was a clear, brilliant sky, and it was quite a sight to see, especially as it sparkled over the ocean. So there was no show on Monday, but we're going to jump right in here and catch up on what's going on, as now the Sun and Mercury are both in Gemini, and life picks up the pace. Gemini is where we start thinking, talking, interacting with people, and I'm going to go into more of these energies here so we can be aware of the gifts of Gemini. I do want to do a quick shout out to some people that I really appreciate and have enjoyed connecting with. First of all, it's Rihanna. I appreciate you and all the ways that you help me and support me, so shout out to you. And also a shout out to my friends in Arkansas, specifically Angela, Aldana, Elaine, Laura, and Erica, in addition to many others. I just appreciated, knowing that you listen to this show, and thank you for everything that you have contributed. So there's been a lot of great energy that's come through since that big full moon in Scorpio this past weekend. How did it feel for you? It was a big one. It was meant to be. It brought in new energies of release and support, of letting go. It meant to bring in new understandings of your power, of understanding what's yours and what's not yours, of rising up, the rising up energies. And this is important to know because over the next 2 weeks, as we approach the new moon in Gemini, we're in this place of thinking and feeling that full moon in Scorpio energies. And with the Sun and Mercury now in Gemini, we're really mentally engaged in our world and in our understanding of what's happening around us. We're really aware of what is worth our mental energy. This is the higher consciousness of Gemini. What is worth my mental energy? And this can help with anxiety and spinning and things that you're overthinking that feel like they're trapped in your mind and they're trapped in your brain, and how do I let it out? Well, the Gemini energy is where we remember we have the choice in what we think about, in what comes in, as well as what goes out. Now, Mercury has been traveling behind the Sun for a few months now, since it was retrograde back in March. And now, as of Tuesday, May 21st, Mercury caught up with the Sun and received a blast of energy, the Sun's warmth, the Sun's light, the Sun's power. And this infuses Mercury in Gemini with a fresh take, a mentally fresh take on things, the new ideas, the new understandings, the sense of I can't do that anymore, I want to do this, or I'm going to direct my mental energy this way instead of that way. So Mercury has just been infused by the Sun. And this is where we're meant to see and understand something in a new way. Gemini is the first air sign in the zodiac. And it's good to understand the progression of astrology signs. So Aries, let's go back here. Aries is your desire to exist. It's that first spark, that first will, that first sense of I'm coming in, I'm going to put on this human suit and I want to be here. And it gives you that fire and that zest to be human and to go on this grand adventure. And Aries is developing courage and personal leadership. It's that desire to, I will choose my life. Thank you very much. Then energy goes to Taurus, which is a grounding earth sign. It's a fixed sign. And it says, I love myself for existing. I love and honor who I am. And I want to create a world, a life for myself that's stable, secure, and that resembles how I love myself. And it's a financial energy, and it's understanding your own personal value and what has meaning to you. Taurus is about our five senses and how we create a life that matters to us. It is your house. It is your car. It is what you buy. It's what you use money to build a life with. General understanding of Taurus. You do this, and as we move into higher consciousness, what you want and what you value shifts. And then we move into Gemini, the first air sign. And that's how we conceptualize the world, how we think about things, how we process information, how we engage in mentally understanding what's around us. And being the first air sign, it's how we learn to talk and speak. It's how we take in information. It's how our brains work. And Gemini is where we say, okay, great, I've got my house, I've got my car, I've got my possessions, I understand who I am, I'm here. Now I want to engage with other people because the air signs are about communication. So this is your first conversations in your life. This is Gemini. Gemini rules youth and school age learning. It's your siblings. It's your classmates. It's your peer group. It's how you were supported when you were younger in learning. Sometimes with Gemini, if there's any tension with Gemini energy, that's where we can see if there's, say, dyslexia, or where there's a different way the information is processed, or that you need more in order to learn. Gemini is also very smart, and so this could be somebody who learns quickly, and then they get bored in class. So Gemini is how we start to take in information in our environment around us, and that's how we learn, how we understand things. At a higher consciousness, Gemini is reminding us that we're in charge of our minds and our thoughts. And if you slow down and you don't move too quickly, and you think things through twice, it can be a very wonderful, clear thought of Gemini. Gemini is a sign of duality. It's a sign of doing things two times because it's the sign of the twins, right? Two things, so the left hand and the right hand. And you do things twice, or you need to learn it twice, or you want to talk about it twice. And so Gemini is where if we can sit with our own brains and be mindful of how we process information, of how we say something, of how we speak to others, we gain greater clarity. And it can really be good for the brain and our neurological process to be conscious of the information we take in, of what we're learning, of what we're curious about, of what we want to know more about. And this is how Gemini is a seeker. It's a seeker of details and specifics, and it asks a lot of questions, but it can also overwork us mentally. So right now, with the strong Gemini energy, we need to stay mindful of what we're thinking about, what the brain is chewing on and gnawing on. Too much Gemini can make it very difficult to sleep because the brain doesn't turn off. So look at how you can be mentally engaged in your world during the day and then turn it off at night. Very important. And that's something that Gemini energy can struggle with because it doesn't know how to turn off. And again, if you can think something through, it can help to write it out and to talk it out. Basically get it out of your brain. That Gemini energy will go back and forth, between the two halves of the brain, like a volleyball. And this thought and this idea and that person and this thing and that thing, and it's like, oh my God, shut up. Write it out, talk it out, get it out, come back to it tomorrow. Okay? Very important for all of us right now. I'm not telling Geminis to shut up, by the way. It's like speaking to your own brain when you just want to go to sleep and your mind won't turn off. So be aware of this right now as we move over the last 10 days of May and into June. There's extra chatter, internal and external. The thing about Gemini is that you can be susceptible to gossip, cheap words, and passing information without ever verifying it or asking questions or looking for more information. It's just accepting something at face value and then passing it on. And that's gossip. Gossip can be good and bad. It can be something that we need to, talk things through, talk about our experiences with something. Typically, gossip does have a bad rap, but it's the intention of it. It's the intention of it, where it's not gossip just to talk about something or someone. It's understanding that you're working through your own internal process. And the higher understanding of Gemini is you're looking at, well, what am I learning? Again, Gemini, we take in information. So what am I learning about this? What am I learning about this person? What am I learning about this event? What am I learning about this experience? And when you're in that frame of mind, it's wonderfully empowering because Gemini will show you what you're learning or help you find those answers and that understanding. So stay open to what you're learning, and this could be at a 3D real-life level, and it can also be at a soul level. And on that note, it brings up the big Scorpio full moon energies that we're now integrating, and we're looking at, well, what shifted, what changed, what is complete for me, what was I learning, what needed to happen in my life so that I could see something differently. Again, the Mercury going across the sun, bam, new understanding, new thoughts, new concepts, new ideas, new projects, new. Mercury just got infused with the power of the sun, and he's ready to get busy. Mercury in Gemini is very busy, and it can be too much, but when you are aware of the energy, it's where you put your phone down, 8 p.m., 9 p.m., and you really turn off the ringer and you turn off everything that your phone does, and you say, okay, I'm not even going to worry about anything until tomorrow morning. And it could be used for your brain too, how we need to turn off our minds and turn off our brains to get out of our mental body. And, I feel like there's something here that we're really meant to be aware of. And I'm feeling like all this mental energy, we live in a world that supports logic, that supports our mental process, that supports everything that we need to do in a day, which is Gemini. It's the energy we use in a day. It's the places we go and the errands and the tasks and going to work and going to school and the logistics of traveling around, of getting in your car, getting on the metro, taking a bike. It's the logistics of everyday life. And we're always in our minds, right? And so there's something here that I'm just feeling intuitively that we're meant to observe ourselves. We're meant to be at, say, the second or third level, let's call it in a building, the second or third story of a building, and you're looking down on yourself on the sidewalk, or you're just looking down on yourself in your life, and you're looking at, well, how much am I using my mind? Am I overdoing it? Is it too much? Am I overthinking? And it's meant to be observing. And that's the strength of the air signs. The air signs are objective. Well, I got cut off, so it must be a good show. Those of you who are listening to the podcast, there was that blank maybe 2 minutes. And if you're listening on YouTube, I try to edit that out. But what I was saying is that we're looking at ourselves and how we're using our mental energies. And one of the great things about Gemini is how you can split into two versions of yourself. And it can be your everyday 3D version, and it can be your 5D version. Again, the duality of our energy fields. And how you can move between, be that chameleon who moves between energy fields to observe yourself, and to do so objectively, because the air signs are objective. Let's talk this through. Let's think about this in an intellectual way. Let's use some logic here. So we're meant to check in with our energies. We're meant to look at even these full moon and Scorpio energies and say, okay, let me look at this objectively. I was maybe really in my feeling body. I was really aware of what was coming up that needed to be purged and removed and cleansed. Now I have support for assessing it objectively, for understanding it from a new place of observing myself, while also staying in my power of what choices are best for me now and how to use my mind in the best possible ways to move something ahead, to start a new endeavor, or to rework, perhaps, to rework what you thought you were going to do, and you say, no, never mind, scratch that. I'm going to do this instead. I'm going to go this direction instead. So there's this reworking energy that's happening during this week, because we're meant to see ourselves differently, and we're meant to understand something in a fresh way. I would even say that every day we could understand something in a fresh way, but this is an activation of consciousness, and I'm just getting the image of little diamonds in our brains being activated. And in fact, I'm going to say crystals being activated in the brain that are reminding us the power of thought, the power of information, the power of specifics, and the power of our own unique essence, of perception, of your perception of the world, for example, but also there's an integration of a higher perception coming through. And that higher perception is being implanted into our brains in a way that we're meant to, it gives us a new vision. It's sort of, I'm just feeling like energies around the eyeballs where it's like, oh, I see something in a new way, or I understand my choices. Gemini is about choices. And I understand I have different choices. And maybe I thought I was locked into something, because that Taurus energy locks us in. It's a fixed sign. And then Gemini says, well, actually, you know you have some choices here. And this is where we also realize that, you know, not choosing something is a choice. You can choose to go to the amazing Nordstrom sale. You can choose not to go to the sale. You can choose to go and take this class. You can choose not to take a class. So we always have choices, but we don't always see the choices. And I feel like there's this illumination around our choices where it could have been like, I thought I had to do this, or I was locked in, or I didn't see there was something over here. I was blinded to it. But now the Gemini energy, especially Mercury conjunct the Sun, oh, look at my choices. Oh, I didn't see this before. And it lights up. Again, I'm seeing it light up the brain. Light up the brain. And this is very invigorating. This is a sense of the freedom and the possibilities and the potentials that we didn't know were there. And I'm just feeling this very strongly. And I hope that that helps free you from anything that maybe you felt mentally locked into, or anything that you felt stuck in. This is a freedom, a mental freedom, the opening of the brain. What's coming to mind is that song by Pharrell Williams, Happy? Like a room without a roof, where you think of a room with no roof and it's just limitless. It's a room that's limitless, and it's sort of like taking that top off of the brain, a brain without a roof, and the energy can just come up and go out, and it's not trapped into something small or something that we thought we had to stay locked into. So it's literally like unlocking something mentally that you felt was keeping you captive, or that you thought were your only choices. Look for choices right now. Look for your choices. Look for and talk them out. Very important with this strong Gemini energy. Talk it out, but also make time to think it through for yourself. Again, going back to that visual of tossing the volleyball back and forth between the two halves of your brain. And then you need to stop before going to bed, but write it out. Write out pros and cons, okay? Like, oh, I could do this or I could do that. Or if I do this or if I don't. I mean, it is a mental process. Gemini is what we learn, and it reminds me of when we have to write essays for school, or you had to do a dissertation, or you had to do a lot of, collecting specifics and details. I'm remembering when I was in grad school, and I did this really deep dive study on the United Nations and the Millennial Development Goals and all these different countries, and I was like, all these footnotes. That's where Gemini goes. It goes into like the intellectual understanding of something, of where did this stem from, where does this go? And that could be satisfying right now, where you could feel like, oh, I got to do this deep dive, or I got to really, get to the heart of something. But Gemini isn't about the deep dive. It's about understanding. And I feel like getting back to this image of choices and opening up the roof on your brain, things can just come through. Things can just come in that connect. Something that you shut down or wasn't available. I'm just feeling like there's literally fresh air. Gemini is an air sign. It's the first air sign. So there's fresh air here. And you don't have to do a deep dive, but feel like you have a sense of power and control. And that starts in your mind, right? How you think about things, your perception. Again, if you were locked into something, you might see it differently now. And that's a strength. It's definitely a strength. We have Mars in Cancer. And this is an interesting combo because Mars is not typically strong in Cancer. It's known for being in his detriment because it's like running in water. And you can't run in water, but you can float and you can swim and you might get there faster. So this Mars in Cancer is activating our emotional body and activating how we feel and looking at where you have any repressed anger, repressed expression that comes out, and it can come out fiercely, it can come out reactionary, it can come out in a big way because Mars in Cancer acts quickly. Cancer is about the feminine energies. It's about our first experience of feelings from childhood. It's the energy that it's the umbilical cord to the mother, and that is your biological mother. That is anyone who was your mother as you were growing up. It's your first understanding of how you feel safe in the world, or where you felt safe to express yourself or safe to not express yourself. And Cancer being very feminine, it is the womb, it is mothering, and Mars is the masculine energy. It is the fighter, it is the warrior, it's an activator. It's where we feel we have to fight for something. And I feel that it's really crazy how Mars is in Cancer, and now the Roe v. Wade issue is coming up. Remember, this was, decided on by the Supreme Court back in 1973. It keeps coming around. It's something that keeps being revisited through different times in our culture and history. And it comes up here with Mars in Cancer, the fight over the feminine body. And whatever way you view this, whatever side you're on, I don't care. We're not going into that. But the astrology of it is that this is a big issue. And it's volatile, right? And it's like you think about what they say about things you don't talk about at a dinner party. You don't talk about politics. You don't talk about religion. You don't talk about abortion. There's things you're not supposed to touch on because they're too big for people. Well, the energy right now is bringing up these big issues and what we really feel under the surface. And if you were to look at the news, the mainstream media is always about these topics that we're not supposed to talk about because the mainstream media, it keeps us fighting. It keeps us in a place of looking at how we're separate, of looking at how we disagree. And that is something to be aware of in our current state of humanity's consciousness, because when we are fighting, when we're angry, when we're emotionally reactive and in our emotional selves, we are in judgment. We are in a place of being limited in our growth and in our spiritual growth. And so we are beyond all of these issues at other levels of consciousness, at other places of spiritual growth. But we came here to help and be a part of humanity's consciousness growth and being of the higher mind. So we have these things that trigger us, these issues, whatever they are for you. And yet we have a choice in how we engage with one another, of how we fight, of how we show up, of how we feel them, of how we respond. Mars in Cancer is saying, how do we respond? And can we respond in a place of higher compassion and love for one another? Cancer is the great mother. It's the mother energy that loves all. And I feel like we're moving through a big energy period here as this Mars squares Chiron at 5 degrees of Aries. This is happening on May 22nd and 23rd. And then Mars is going to come through and oppose Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn, and then also make a conjunction to the North Node in Cancer. I have a separate video for you on YouTube about this exact energy that will be showing up the middle of June. I believe it starts June 11th through the 15th. So please check out that video for more insights on this energy. But we're in it now. Mars stirs up our reactions. And what we can do, especially when we couple it with the strong Gemini energy, is we look at what we're learning from our emotional body, from our unconscious self, where we stored impressions of our feelings. We stored how we felt, and we didn't know how to say it in a way that was perhaps clear or objective. The energy right now strongly supports sitting with yourself, sitting with your feelings, and allowing yourself to work something through mentally, the volleyball between the two halves of your brain, and then to speak it in a way that feels powerful, that feels truthful, that activates your throat chakra. And this is a process, and this is not something, it's something that is best internally if possible. You're teaching yourself, you're understanding yourself, you're going into your own world. The planets in Aries, Taurus, Gemini, and Cancer are the first four. They're in the first four signs of the zodiac, which is about the self-development area. It's that understanding, who am I, what do I value, what do I think, what do I feel? That's Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer. And with the personal planets here, and with the Sun and Chiron, it's like we're understanding more of who we are right now. And we're meant to do it at a higher level of consciousness. And with the sense of, what do I want to do differently? What am I learning about myself? What do I want to feel about this area of my life?